Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or who knows what time of day it is from where you are tuning in, or even when you're tuning in. But one thing is for sure is that day 7 at the US Open has reached its conclusion, with many of the fourth round matches now being decided. Get your comments in the live chat. We've gone live today. Let me know what you thought of yesterday's action. Let's have a quick look at some of those results before we go into a little bit more detail regarding each of the matches. So if you see here, Nick Kyrgios and Daniil Medvedev really stealing the evening's action on Arthur Ashe, being the first match on there. Probably to no one's great surprise that it actually captivated the imagination of not only the New York crowd, but anybody else around the world watching. I think we all expected fireworks. I guess we did get fireworks. And did we get a surprising result? I think it surprised me. I thought Medvedev was starting to return to the kind of form he was showing a year ago, and which has been pretty much absent since this moment. This, of course, is the moment in the Australian Open final when he's 2-0 up, 3-2 up, and 3 break points. And I would say from this moment to now, he's not been the same player. Let me know whether you agree with me, whether you think maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on Daniil, given the fact that, of course, he did win a tournament recently, but he did also lose to Kyrgios recently too. But he's only won one tournament all year. He's not really. I don't think he's been in a final, even though a Masters 1000, or of course even a major since then. Albeit that Wimbledon, of course, he wasn't able to qualify for. He was injured for a portion of the early part of the season. But what is going on with Daniil Medvedev? Certain people, I think Vonch on Twitter was suggesting that maybe he needs to develop his game a bit. Maybe he needs to go back to the drawing board, I think, to use his words exactly. It's a bit of a thing, really. I think we are now at a point, it's been 9 months since that Australian Open final. Is it a mental thing? There are certain parts of his game that do seem to be, people are picking holes in it now. I think from that midpoint, to be honest with you, in the third set of that match, Nadal seemed to start to figure things out, seemed to start to put him in. We saw so many times in that match, and we've seen it since, when he's in that no man's land, he doesn't really know whether to go to attack the net or go back to the baseline where he generally feels more comfortable. We saw the serve at certain points during this US swing. It sort of evaded him, particularly in Cincinnati. So anyway, Medvedev, discuss. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat and also in the comments below. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. So, of course, regarding yesterday's match anyway, as more specifically, 7-6, Kyrgios winning an epic tiebreaker, 13-11. But you still thought this has a long way to go. As I said before, I thought Medvedev was just starting to purr. In that third round win against Wu, I thought both players were excellent. I just thought that Medvedev was just flying. And I started to see signs, as I say, of a return to the Medvedev of a year ago, or even a Medvedev until that midpoint of the Australian Open final back in January. I was wrong. The second set, Medvedev wins that 6-3. I thought, here we go. It's now going to be Medvedev in 4. I expected a dip perhaps, or even a collapse from Kyrgios. He's somebody I don't have a huge amount of faith in. Over 5 sets, over 2 weeks at a major. I know he got to the Wimbledon final, but I think that I thought was his best chance of winning a major, both on the grass surface, I think, which does suit his game, given his big serve in particular. But I was wrong. Kyrgios played probably the best tennis of his life. Medvedev may have been just a couple of percent lower than his best in the next sort of couple of sets. But Medvedev said in his press conference afterwards, giving full praise to his opponent, where he said, look, I've played Novak and Rafa. They all played amazing. But Nick today played at that kind of level, in my opinion. So that is there. And I tell you what, their exchange of the net that we see here in this image does kind of speak volumes. I think there is, normally we see sometimes some, of course, between Kyrgios and opponents, some needle, and we'll come into his next opponent very shortly. But none of that yesterday. I thought we saw some antiques from Kyrgios, which we'll also come to shortly. But largely, there was a huge amount of respect, and certainly Medvedev giving a lot of that to his opponent there at the net. US Open here tweeting, of course, script flipped. Going back to that Australian Open where they met in the second round, at that point, really, I think most of us had Medvedev as hot favorite. Some people did predict that Kyrgios was going to have a good US Open and include a victory over his Russian opponent. I remember Andre telling me about a week before this tournament, saying that he thought that Kyrgios was in for a good tournament. I know JG from the Game to Love podcast has also speculated that actually he felt that Kyrgios would overcome Medvedev. At least he said that before the tournament. Interesting spelling mistake here, by the way, with Australian, but never mind. Doesn't matter. Script flipped because Medvedev won in 4 back in January. Very different Medvedev then. Very different Kyrgios then. Yesterday, script flipped. And to be honest with you, I think Nick Kyrgios flipped the script even in the beginning of the third set. I thought it would be downhill all the way for Medvedev from that moment. Not at all. 6-3, 6-2, Kyrgios with a double break there in the fourth set, rounding it out. But of course, it wouldn't be a Kyrgios match without a few Kyrgios moments. Let me first mention, before we get into the strange moment with I'll explain, and I will come to the live chat. Actually, let's have a quick look in the live chat right now. I can see Gene is here. It's great to have you on board, Gene. Shouting from the rooftops, you were right, Nick, to beat Medi. When did you predict that? Did you predict that pre-tournament, Gene, or did you predict that pre-match yesterday? Because I think, always with these tournament predictions, you can have a thought a week before the tournament starts, or when the draw is made, let's say, a few days before. And then, of course, we see how things are developing. I have to say, I thought Medvedev would win once the draw was made. And there was nothing in the first 3 rounds that made me think I was going to change my mind. I wasn't super impressed with Kyrgios in the first 3 rounds. I thought his comments in the press conference suggested that maybe he was starting to just feel a bit of lethargy, obviously playing the European swing, or the grass court swing, I should probably say, season, and then obviously coming to North America. But even Kyrgios seemed to be just going a little bit over that hill in terms of the peak. I was wrong, because he peaked big style yesterday. I've already mentioned how it's probably the best match of his career. Based on the eye test, it seems Medvedev may have played better against Wu, weaker opponent there. That's exactly what I was highlighting, Meadow. I thought against Wu, I see you've got it there in your bracket there, Gene. Thanks for highlighting that. I thought against Wu, Meadow, that Medvedev was amazing. And I thought, here we go. He's going to beat Kyrgios now. The draw was opening up. And of course, it's really opened up for Nick Kyrgios now, who must be thinking, maybe I'm going to get to the US Open final. And that'll be back-to-back major finals. Long way to go yet. And of course, he's got a certain person to beat in the quarterfinals, who we'll come to in a moment. But yeah, that Medvedev-Wu match, I watched that from start to finish, despite it being very late here in Germany. It came on after the Serena Williams epic match against Tomljanović, who, of course, we'll also be coming to shortly. But yeah, I thought that was it. I thought Medvedev was incredible against Wu. I thought Wu was incredible against Medvedev. I thought both showed top level tennis that would beat most opponents on that day. But I was wrong. Yeah. So you think it's a matchup problem for Medvedev, Gene? Nick has bigger serves, volleys, drop shots, etc. Maybe, but we are talking about, I don't know exactly what the record was, but I think Medvedev, it was a close match in Australia, but we weren't saying this after the Australian Open. I think something, something has changed for Medvedev since that midpoint of the Nadal match. Nadal played him again 3 weeks later in Acapulco. This is Medvedev. And it was just a no contest. Nadal's level, I think, was even higher than it was in Australia. But Medvedev's level has dipped. Of course, he had a large period of the season off, injured in about March, April time, missing a huge chunk of the clay court season. No big deal for Medvedev. It is his weakest surface. And he still had a half-decent run at the French Open. I think he went out to Cilic there, which is probably a little bit of a surprise because it's hardly Cilic's best surface. But I think Medvedev was okay on the grass, albeit he had to miss Wimbledon. But something has been missing. A little bit of a spark from Medvedev, and he needs to get it back. ASAP. I mean, maybe he can have a nice run in Paris, Bercy, of course, at the Indoor 1000, and then, of course, the ATP Tour Finals in Turin. I mean, he's not guaranteed qualifier, but I would have thought he will make those finals. Exposes Medi. Yeah, I mean, one thing that Medi does seem to be, thanks, Gene, for this comment too. I mean, as I said before, and we saw a lot in that Australian Open final, he does sort of get caught short sometimes. He doesn't really know what to do. He's not someone who's really comfortable attacking the net. And so he sort of wants to retreat, but he just doesn't get comfortable. The first set seemed crucial. Yeah, and also, Meadow, that's exactly what Kyrgios said in his press conference afterwards. He said the first set was crucial, and boy, what a tiebreaker that was. 13-11, insane. Kyrgios, tight moment. I think his tiebreak record, they did highlight it, wasn't as good. It's not terrible. It's kind of more or less 50-50 this year, slightly better than 50-50 for Kyrgios, I think, in tiebreaks. But Medvedev's was significantly better this year. So I thought, here we go. I also had a feeling that Medvedev would win that tiebreak. Wrong again. RIP sleep schedule there from Gene. But listen, we can't blame Rafa. That's a good funny point there from Gene. Yeah, he's destroyed his year, perhaps. So we can't talk about this match, though, without... Thanks, Gene, for highlighting that during the tiebreaker. Listen, we can't talk about this match, though, without mentioning 3 moments. Now, there's one big moment that we all know about, but I think there's a storyline that builds up to this, which hasn't been highlighted since, which is that I think it was during that first set, before the tiebreaker, Nick let a ball go, which he could have got the racket on quite comfortably. And it landed about 50 centimeters inside the baseline for a point for Medvedev. It was a huge mistake from Kyrgios because it wasn't a super tricky ball for him to get. He was at the net and he was a bit stretched, but he easily could have got it, and he intentionally left it. I think if he got to that ball, it probably would have been a 50-50 in terms of whether he ended up winning that point or not. It probably would have taken a good volley from Nick to do so, but he's capable of that. But he decided to leave it, and it landed. But it didn't just land just inside the baseline. It landed comfortably inside the baseline. I'm sure many of you don't remember this point because there were other moments in the match far more memorable, which we'll be coming to in a minute. But I think it leads to what follows. I don't remember when it was. It may have been a game or two later, but I'm pretty sure it was also in that first set as well. There was a lofted ball from Medvedev, and it's going out. This is not the one we're all going to come to and we all know about, but this is a ball that it's going to land on Kyrgios' side of the net, but it's going to land about a meter in the tram line. And I watched the replay a few times again afterwards to be sure about this. No doubt about it. And I'm sure, and I was sure then, and I'm even sure because of what followed, Kyrgios knew it was going to land out as well. But maybe because of what happened before, he thought, I'm sure this is going to land out, but I'm not going to do what happened before. I'm just going to hit this ball. It was a much easier volley to hit. He hits it and he wins the point. But I was like, what? What is he doing hitting that ball when it's so comfortably going out? And it's a lot easier to judge when you're approaching the tram line. You're approaching the tram line, you can see where the ball is going to land pretty much. It's a bit different when it's flying past your head and going behind you. Anyway, he decides to hit it. Bizarre. That's Nick Kyrgios. But nowhere near as bizarre as what was to follow. Here we have a moment, I think it was in the third set, but I could be wrong, but it's not so important when it was exactly in the match. But here we have a point. But what is important is I think Kyrgios is at 30 all in this particular game. So it's a huge moment. He's about to get break point on the Medvedev serve, and this is long before the end of the match. It's 1 hour 50 in. So yeah, I think it was in the third set. And here's what happens. Look, Medvedev turns his back because he's lost the point, and Kyrgios decides to hit the ball deep on the side of Medvedev's side of the court, and he goes to hit the ball. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. Medvedev then loses that point as a result. He doesn't realize that cost him the point. And to be honest with you, it is kind of a strange rule. Let me know what you think about this rule. That I think, you know what? What's wrong with going around the other side of the net and hitting that ball? And I think he hit it on the volley, of course. Of course, he hit it on the volley because if he leaves it, it goes out. Nick doesn't know the rules. Well, to be honest with you, listen, talking tennis, analysis, expert. Yeah, he didn't know the rules, and I thought it was okay to do that too. I thought it's fine. I'm pretty sure you can lean over the net as long as you don't touch the net. But I guess you're not allowed to run round the net. Perhaps there's a maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's because I know you're allowed to lean over the net. Or let's say the ball is hooping up, you're allowed to lean over the net and whack it down, as far as I'm aware. But anyway, Nick didn't know the rules. I wasn't sure either. Immediately, Medvedev puts his hand in the air, going, "Hang on a second." An umpire gives him the point. At that point, as Gene also mentions there, I thought it was going to be a turning point too. I thought this would be now, we're going to see a meltdown from Kyrgios here. He's decided to have a bit of fun, and it's backfired because he loses the point. Didn't matter. Kyrgios was awesome in those next two sets, and I've already highlighted Medvedev Medvedev highlighting his press conference afterwards, just praising his opponent's level, and just as well. And it surprised me. It really did. Did it surprise you too? I mean, I know some of you said that you thought that Medvedev would go out at this point to Kyrgios. McEnroe, by the way, when you say McEnroe, do you mean Patrick or John there, Meadow? Because I know there was some conversation between Kyrgios and Patrick McEnroe during the match, bizarrely enough. I listen. I thought it was okay. I know you can do that over the net, so why not do whatever? You know, if it's such a moment that's going to happen so rarely that anyway. Whatever. I don't understand that rule personally, but okay, John McEnroe. Yeah, but then again, though, I think there are a few holes in John McEnroe's tennis analysis, but there are some in mine too. Anyway, whatever. Point is, Medvedev goes on to lose that set and also lose the following set too, and 6-2 as well. I think actually was there 3 breaks of serve in the final set? I'm not sure. I think Kyrgios may have been broken too, but aside from that, it ended up being a fairly comfortable win for Kyrgios. There, despite obviously losing that second set, at which I thought Medvedev would then definitely go on and win in 4. Wrong. And I'll be wrong again in the future. Let me know in the live chat, can Kyrgios go on and win this tournament? If he is going to go on and win, he's going to have to beat Karen Khachanov in the quarterfinals. Yes, Karen Khachanov is in the quarterfinals of the US Open. Who saw that coming? I'm sure if you did see it coming, you'll mention it in the live chat. But I certainly didn't see it coming. So let me know whether anyone here watching thought Karen Khachanov was going to get to the quarterfinals of the US Open. Particularly, of course, having to play PCB. PCB in pretty good form. I know he went out early in Cincinnati, but he did win in Montreal. Suggested he was going to have a really good run here. And I did see some other good signs from PCB. Winning that fairly tight match against de Minaur, but it was in 4 sets, but it was super tight, if you know what I mean. I think it was a 4-set tiebreaker that he won that particular match on. But there were some good signs for PCB. I also have said how this half of the draw, which I thought was fairly stacked at the beginning of the tournament with Fritz and Tsitsipas also in this side of the draw, but both those two going out in the first round really changed the dynamic. Felix then going out to Jack Draper. I thought the absence of those 3 players meant if Medvedev could beat Kyrgios, looking good. PCB, looking good. Nick there commenting on Khachanov. Khachanov tends to peak when you least expect it. Yeah, quite possibly. Well, I certainly didn't see this coming. But good for him, and I'm really pleased. He's such a nice guy. Nice guy is something that I think PCB, despite being someone who's often under the radar, he does divide opinion. I like PCB for many reasons, but there was also it was a day of some bizarre moments, because there was also a bizarre moment in this match too, which I want to bring to our attention here. And it's this moment. It's at the end of the 3rd set. Khachanov has won it, as it turns out, comfortably 6-1, turning the match on its head. I thought PCB looked pretty good in that first set. I mean, PCB winning that first set with a backhand down the line, excellent, 6-4, boom. This match is going the way I expect it. Khachanov wins the second set, but I still thought, PCB in 4 makes sense. Could go 5. However, PCB is pretty much crushed in this third set. And then we have this moment, which is Kyrgios-esque in a way. I think David Law on the Tennis Podcast has suggested that PCB kind of tanked this set or game. And I will come to some other issues in a minute, but this was bizarre. It's obviously 80-20 in Khachanov's favor that he's going to win this point. 80-20. But, if you're there at the net, you sort of hog the net, you can maybe distract your opponent, stick a racket out. Maybe you get it back to deuce, and then who knows? I mean, I remember a quote from Nadal in Indian Wells when I think he's a double break down to Sebi Korda, and he's in a press conference afterwards, and he's like, listen, you're double break down in the third set, probably you lose the match. But if you give up, you definitely lose it. If you don't give up, maybe there's a 10% chance. Bizarre. We have seen some examples of bizarre behavior from PCB before. He then gets booed, for this particular incident, but perhaps his performance. I know he calls for the trainer, and I'm now going to go back to the live chat. I'm sure some of you either are mentioning this in the live chat, shouting at me in the live chat, or even just shouting in your heads. PCB called for the trainer. Yeah, but then what we saw from PCB over the next couple of hours or hour and a half suggested he was okay. Maybe it was just a slight moment, but he was fine. He was moving fine throughout the fourth set. That's for sure. So I don't know, question marks there. It's the sort of thing you just don't see from Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, perhaps Serena Williams, Iga Swiatek as well. It's just that's the kind of thing you just don't see from those players. On Jabeur springs to mind as well. And yet we do see it from players like PCB. And I don't know, maybe that's holding him back ultimately from converting latter stages, second weeks of slams into finals or even wins. Trish, and they're saying that Nick makes the final from here. I guess he's the favorite amongst this little, in this half now. I mean, we've got him against Khachanov. I'm trying to think who else is obviously there. Berrettini. I don't know. Berrettini for me. Berrettini's slight favorite against Casper Ruud, who was also victorious yesterday in 4 sets against Moutet. Berrettini, Kyrgios is 50-50. I think if the best Kyrgios turns up, i.e. yesterday's Kyrgios, probably Kyrgios is favorite. But the chances of that happening are 50-50. We just don't know. What we do know is the Berrettini that will turn up, which is a solid, 7-8 out of 10, a solid player that regularly gets to quarterfinals, semifinals, and obviously made the Wimbledon final this year, and may well have made it again had he not got COVID. Anyway, I think it's a good moment to bring us to. But before we do, sorry, just one more thing on Khachanov and the Kyrgios quarterfinals about to come. I want to highlight what Vanch here said on Twitter regarding this upcoming quarterfinal, because he's highlighting a conversation that Kyrgios and Khachanov had on that excellent website we call Twitter, which is Kyrgios highlighting what Wilander said about Andy Murray. I think it was it was 2 years ago, as we can see here. I think it was when Andy Murray went out at the US Open 2 years ago. Wilander said, listen, he should maybe not stay on the tour. Maybe it's time for Andy Murray to hang up his racket. And many of us, including Kyrgios, I think called Mats out. We can do it in a slightly more respectable manner. But I think many of us thought that was a bit harsh from Wilander. Listen, it's up to Andy Murray, 3-time major winner, to decide when he wants to hang up a racket. And I think he's proven in the 2 years since that he's more than capable of winning matches. And he won a tournament in Antwerp. So I think and I still think that he will make a deep run at a major very soon. It's crazy that Wilander was saying he should hang up his racket. No. Andy Murray decides when Andy Murray hangs up his tennis racket. And Kyrgios, they're saying exactly that, albeit maybe in a slightly harsher tone. Shut up, Mats. No one cares, blah, blah, blah. Nick, come on, mate. It's too much. Show some respect, is what Khachanov said at the time. No, I'm good, dude. Muzz and I respect each other, so it's obviously he's referring to Andy Murray there. But But I'm supposed to respect Mats for what? Hitting ball over the net? I don't give my respect for that. Uh, classic Kyrgios there, of course. But the conversation obviously doesn't end there. Khachanov returns. Bro, it's your call. I really think you're a good lad and I don't have a problem with you, which is really nice of Khachanov. Nice guy, Khachanov. That's a good way of approaching it. Probably this is the end of the conversation. You would have thought, but once you're sitting at home and writing different comments about players. Anyway, so you think that what the players did? Anyway, I could go on. You can see the words. I suggest you check it all out. But given this spat, and it concludes with Kyrgios saying, I've also been feeding the hungry, helping up new facilities for kids to get active, which he did during the pandemic, and hats off to him for that. I don't know how it's got anything to do with Mats Wilander. Let's think where we came from with this conversation. It starts with Mats Wilander suggesting Andy Murray should retire and ends up with him talking about Khachanov being an absolute pelican. Interesting choice of words there from Kyrgios. I believe that was the end of the conversation. Check it all out. Follow Vonch on Twitter, by the way, Vonch V2K. He's always got some great insights, and this being one of them, I guess. So that's to look forward to. Berrettini, who I touched on before, emerging in 5 sets against Davidovich Fokina. It was a really good match. And again, this was a match I probably didn't quite see going in this direction. I didn't see Davidovich Fokina grabbing the first set in the way he did. Berrettini obviously fighting back 7-6, 6-3 in the next 2 sets. Maybe I should have expected, because Davidovich Fokina, as many have highlighted, including Jethro, that he's box office all the time, no matter what and no matter who he's up against. And yesterday was excellent. And perhaps Davidovich Fokina in that fifth set was a bit hindered. I know he called for the trainer a few times, seemed to have an issue with his knee. I don't know if it was locked or anything. Let me know in the live chat what you think about that match, and also about whether you think a fully fit Davidovich Fokina would have gone on to win that match. I'm actually going to go to the live chat now to see what some of you have been saying in the last few minutes. Yeah, don't tell pros when to retire. Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I think pretty much anyone on the tour, whether you're 200 in the world or number 5 in the world, or you're a multiple major winner or not, I think it's up to you when you can retire. And I couldn't agree with that more, Meadow. I think it was an unusual comment from Wilander. I think sometimes, and I know how it is on this channel, sometimes maybe you just feel as though you have to fill the airways with something, and maybe that was one of those moments. I'm surprised that Wilander, though, didn't reel it in a bit, maybe afterwards, and maybe even rethink it. Okay, Berrettini through, solid Berrettini, beats who he should, and loses to also who he should, normally Nadal or Djokovic. Well, no Djokovic this time, and no Nadal in his half, so maybe Berrettini will make the final. Let me know who you think will make the final. I just want to see, we've got a few of you on board right now. Let's imagine we've got Berrettini or Kyrgios. I think they're the 2 most likely finalists from this half of the draw right now. Casper Ruud will obviously have something to say about it as well, and Khachanov too. But let me just know in the live chat, we've got some of you here. All I want right now is B or K. B or K. Who is making the US Open final? Put in B, put in K if you think Berrettini for B, Khachanov K. No, Kyrgios, sorry, Kyrgios. Kyrgios K. K for Kyrgios. K for Kyrgios, B for Berrettini. Okay, put it in the live chat now. I want to see those points, and I'll be bringing them up on the screen in a moment. For me, I'll go Berrettini. I'll go Berrettini. Thanks, Meadow. There, going Berrettini with a B. I would probably just go for Berrettini too. But listen, it's super, super close. By the way, if you think it's going to be Ruud, put R in the chat too. And if you think it's going to be Khachanov, put KH. But I imagine most of us are going to go Berrettini or Kyrgios. Okay, so lots to look forward to. Kyrgios, by the way, Casper Ruud winning there in 4 sets against Moutet. It's not a match I managed to catch. It was one that I thought would be won by Ruud. Kind of surprised he even lost a set there to the lucky loser, Moutet. But Ruud obviously cruising through. Maybe he's had a bit of a fortunate draw there, a 4th round opponent who's a lucky loser. I think Ruud also had a bit of a lucky draw at the French Open. Of course, by the way, Casper Ruud could emerge as world number 1 at the end of this tournament. Sorry, Connor, it's great to have you on board, by the way. All I want from you in the live chat is B or K. B for Berrettini, K for Kyrgios, who you think is getting to the US Open final. Feel free to put R for Ruud, and feel free to put KH for Khachanov. But for me, it's either Berrettini or Kyrgios, and I imagine that's the case for most of us. Meadow going B there. Let me know, B or K, Berrettini or Kyrgios in the live chat, and I'll bring it up on the screen. Connor, they're going for Kyrgios. I think it really is 51-49. I've gone for Berrettini, but maybe you shouldn't listen to me because I also went for Tsitsipas at the beginning of the tournament, and we all know what happened there. Thanks, Connor, for your consideration there. Yeah, world number one up for grabs. 3 players in that mix for the world number one at the end of this tournament, and Casper Ruud is one of them, albeit that Ruud's chances are pretty minimal because I think he needs to win the US Open and hope that Nadal doesn't get to the final. So that's just giving you the scenario for Casper Ruud to be world number one. He needs to win the tournament, which I think is a long shot anyway, but he also needs it not to be against Nadal, so he needs Nadal not to make the final. Alcaraz, Carlos Alcaraz, who's obviously in action later today, he just needs to win it. If he wins the US Open, he's the world number one on the men's side, and of course, he would become the youngest world number one ever. Now, that is a possibility. I think the Ruud one is unlikely for various reasons. I think Ruud has been a bit lucky with the draw, as I said, and I think he was lucky in the French Open with his draw too, to be honest with you. Listen, great player on certainly on clay and on the hard court. Very consistent, very decent player. Obviously getting to the final in Miami this year. He's now in the quarterfinals of the US Open here. And he obviously got the French Open final earlier this year. So it's been a good year for Casper Ruud. I still think that he's not shown me enough to suggest that he's a world number one, but maybe he can prove me wrong in the next 3 or 4 days or so. Anyway, 4 or 5 days, actually. It's a bit longer yet. By the way, for those of you wondering, don't know if there'll be a 30 or 20 minutes tomorrow. I'm saying 30 minutes because we're already at 32 here. By the way, I don't know if anyone thinks it's kind of interesting that we have this term, the 20 minutes. I tried to bring it to 20 minutes, but I knew today would go over because so much to talk about from yesterday. Anyway, I'm off to New York tomorrow, so don't know if there'll be a 20 minutes tomorrow, but I might do a few. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I think I will try and document my journey to New York, which will be beginning in the early hours of the morning here in Germany and will end sometime tomorrow night in New York. Anyway, that will be documented. I'll probably do a few shorts on that and be putting that on YouTube and hopefully make it as tennis related as possible. So make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Anyway, world number one. I said Ruud needs to win it, but not against Nadal in the final. Alcaraz wins the US Open. He becomes world number one and the youngest ever. Every other possibility, Nadal is world number one. Basically, it's a shootout. In basic essence, if one of those 3 wins this tournament, they may well become world number one. And Nadal is obviously the favorite because Alcaraz needs to win it. Ruud needs to win it. So I guess Nadal is the most likely. Thanks for the compliment there, Connor. Josh, they're saying that Kyrgios has been a bit surprising this year. Yeah. I guess I didn't quite see this consistency. Consistency is the word. I actually put it to him. I spoke to Nick Kyrgios in a press conference, and one of his calmer matches, let's say at Wimbledon, I mentioned to him about his consistency this year, and I think I asked him but he didn't really think this had been his best year ever. And I was like, dude, I think he was approaching his. He just won his quarterfinal at Wimbledon. That's the furthest he'd ever gone at Wimbledon, and I think a major as well. He'd only lost to Medvedev at that stage at the Australian Open. No shame in that. Medvedev was on fire at that point, and he'd shown enough evidence throughout the grass court season as well that he was doing pretty well and pretty consistent. And I think Meadow, they're highlighting how happy he seems off the court, may well be. On the court, he doesn't always seem happy, but anyway. But also, Meadow, they're highlighting a relaxed Natha with no line sight. Doesn't see how he doesn't win the title and therefore incoming world number one. Maybe. Okay, we've talked a lot about the ATP and the men's side yesterday. Of course, there was a lot to talk about, but we're already 35 minutes in and we haven't mentioned what happened on the women's side yesterday. And there is a lot to talk about, albeit I would say more probably impressive, let's say, impressive victories, impressive performances from certain players. Coco Gauff there at the top of the screen on the right-hand side, they're defeating Zhang. They're in straight sets. Wasn't as comfortable, though, as straight sets suggests. This was a match of backhands, particularly from Coco Gauff, but it was all about the backhand, and I'll explain what I mean. Backhand winners galore and backhand winners at big moments. Zhang takes an early lead, 2-love, break up. Uh-oh, Coco Gauff, spot a bother, at least in the first set, you think. She breaks back immediately. And she breaks back immediately with a crushing backhand down the line. At 3-3 in the first set, she breaks again, Coco Gauff. Guess what? Backhand winner. Boom. Although Zhang gets it back on serve, so they're now at 5-all, although it becomes 6-5 to Gauff. Zhang serving, under a bit of pressure, set point Gauff, backhand winner. Boom. First set, 7-5. Unlucky for Zhang. I think it was really nip and tuck. Obviously, a few exchanges of breaks of serve, but Gauff's backhand winners, unbelievable. Gauff breaking serve 3 times in that set doesn't surprise me, and also being broken twice. I've highlighted it before. It feels like Gauff would rather not serve at the moment. How strong she is, particularly in terms of breaking serve. Feels like my level. I don't know how it is, what your level is when you play tennis. Maybe some of you are really strong. Maybe some of you have got big serves. I don't really care when I'm broken because my serve is not my strong point. I tend to play on clay as well. So in fact, tend to play on clay. I think I play 95% of the time on clay. So I always just think it's okay. And often it works out that way. And anyway, it feels like that way with Coco Gauff at the moment. Second set, backhand winner for 5-3. Coco Gauff. Boom. Oh no, I mentioned that before. Sorry. Anyway, that was in the first set. Second set, I think Gauff was also a breakdown at 5-3. Yeah, so she was 5-3 down in the second set. Sorry, to Zhang. Coco Gauff reels off 4 games in a row. And the reason, and by the way, Zhang also won one of those games to break, actually, I think, with a backhand winner. So hats off for her backhand on that moment. However, the match finishes on a backhand error from Zhang into the net. Game, set, match, Coco Gauff. Very impressive again from the American. So she's through to the quarterfinals. Also through to the quarterfinals, Ajla Tomljanović, who just gives a nice little yay on Twitter, which is lovely. She almost can't believe it there. She said, it seems like she's soaking it all in. The US Open tennis account speculates. But listen, I understand why maybe she couldn't believe it. Obviously, she got to the quarterfinal at Wimbledon. I think she had a really good run at Wimbledon last year. I think she got to quarterfinals too. Seemingly that Wimbledon may be her preferred tournament. But I know a few of us thought Samsonova would prevail. I thought the emotion and the energy perhaps taken out from her in that incredible match against Serena might just mean that she would carry it into this one, which is obviously a much flatter occasion, a half-empty Louis Armstrong, completely different kind of match against a very different opponent in Samsonova, who was, by the way, playing really well, really good aggressive tennis, defeating... a couple of rounds ago, she beat Layla very well, very comfortably. And I know Jack was very optimistic about Samsonova's chances at this tournament. So hats off to Tomljanović, winning it in straight sets too. So that's Tomljanović also into the quarterfinals, along with Jabeur. Didn't see this match, I'm afraid, so I can't comment on it. Let me know in the live chat about Jabeur's victory, if you did see the match. Also, I'm a little bit surprised. Am I wrong? Am I an idiot for being surprised on Jabeur making the quarterfinal? She obviously got to the Wimbledon final. She had a good clay court season until she went out in the first round at the French Open. And she had a good Wimbledon, of course, getting to the final, albeit maybe there'll be some thoughts of regret regarding that final at SW19. I don't know. I just saw her as being somebody who's going to win a slam. It'll probably be at Wimbledon or maybe at Roland Garros, albeit that obviously very different surfaces. I just saw hard court, too many opponents for her, too many people that could win this tournament and could knock her out. I actually had her losing to Shelby Rogers in the previous round. Prove me wrong. I have other players in this draw who I thought could beat her on any given day, and there's so many potential. I think that's the thing with Wimbledon compared to and Roland Garros. Take Iga Swiatek on clay. I think she's just a cut above everyone else. On grass, obviously being a bit more sort of specific in terms of players that could potentially win Wimbledon. I just feel that the field was too wide, or is too wide, for her to go on and win this tournament. But hey, she's proven me wrong before, and she may well prove me wrong again. And when I say before, I think in the spring, I had a bet with JG about who would finish higher in the world rankings. I went for Maria Sakkari. He said on Jabeur. It would take a miracle, I think, now for Maria Sakkari, bless her, to stay above Jabeur in the rankings. I think they're currently 3 and 5, but with Jabeur's run here and also Maria Sakkari going out fairly early, bearing in mind she got to the semi-finals last year, I think it would take a miracle for the Greek to remain above the Tunisian. But let's see. Anyway, let me know in the live chat about Jabeur. Am I underestimating her? Can she win this tournament? Talking of the live chat, let's go and have a quick look to see what's going on. Nick there going with Kyrgios, I mentioned earlier, with predictions of who's going to get to the final out of him and Berrettini. Thank you for that, Nick. Meadow there, as a Zhang fan, upset that she didn't take a chance that she had in each set. Yeah, she did have chances. As I say, she was a breakup early on in the match. She was a breakup in the second set. Pity for her. But Coco, maybe the best as Meadows seen her play. Yeah. The other thing with Coco is is she the best all-court player? Swiatek, of course, for me, is very strong on clay. That's an understatement. Hard court, extremely good, but beatable. And grass, okay, she's a junior Wimbledon champion, Swiatek, but she's yet to have a very good run at Wimbledon. So you can't really call her a master of all surfaces, put it that way. Who else? On Jabeur, we've mentioned. I still see her, despite going out in the first round at the French Open. I still see clay and grass, despite the contrast in those surfaces, perhaps being her best surface. Hey, listen, if she gets to the final here, that will be an incredibly consistent year from Jabeur. But I see Coco Gauff, perhaps. Am I missing anyone? I do see Coco Gauff as being maybe the most consistent across the 3 surfaces, getting to the French Open final. I actually thought she would do better at Wimbledon because I do see her as being a pretty good grass court player too. Although she didn't quite back that up this year, I would suggest. But of course, her breakthrough was at Wimbledon in 2019, beating Venus Williams on the grass. And I think she got to maybe the 3rd round that year. I think she went out to Joanna Konta, am I right? But she was very young then, and she's been getting better year on year. And she's had a great year, I would suggest. Can Coco Gauff round it off with a major win this year, a tournament win, a US Open win? I would probably put Coco Gauff ahead of Jabeur in my pecking order. I actually have Coco Gauff getting to the final. In my bracket, I had a Coco Gauff Iga Swiatek final, so at least I haven't been shamed like I have on the men's side with my prediction of, I think I had Tsitsipas Nadal in that final. Of course, Nadal very much still in the tournament and in action later today. And much earlier than previous rounds, of course, he was sort of the 1 a.m. as it is here in Germany, the midnight match in the UK, and therefore the 7 p.m. in New York. But given it's Labor Day in the US today, or it's certainly in New York, and I think it's US-wide, it's obviously a day off, so people are not working today, and therefore sort of peak matches, if you like, can be scheduled a bit earlier. And Nadal is against Tiafoe later on today. I think it's second up on Ash. So expect that to be hitting your TV screens if you're in Europe like me sometime this evening, maybe around about 8 o'clock, something like that. But it depends on the previous match. But that is later. Yesterday, one final match that we haven't spoken about is Garcia, who again looking good. Unbelievable aggressive tennis from Garcia, by the way, in dismantling Risk Armitage 6-4, 6-1. Maybe a bit under the radar, Garcia, at this tournament, not pre-tournament. She had a great run and she's had a great summer, actually. I would suggest doing very well at Wimbledon, beating Raducanu there, of course, and now doing unbelievably, and also winning a Masters 1000 in Cincinnati, am I right? Certainly one of those 2 Masters 1000 she won. I think it was Cincinnati. And now she's on into the quarterfinal. She seems to be super confident right now. She's hitting the ball amazingly. She also dismantled Andreescu in the previous round, to my disappointment, and maybe, I don't know, I think to Nick's disappointment too. Both of us are a big fan of Andreescu's. And I was a bit surprised. I had Andreescu winning that match in 3. Never mind. Garcia really, really well. I think she won it in straight sets in the end, that match. It was still pretty close. 2 very aggressive players, to be fair. They both take risks. But Garcia took the risks, and she was pulling off winners after winners after winners, and deservedly so. And it was the same yesterday. She just, when you're that kind of player, confidence is huge. And she seems to be so confident at the moment. However, I don't know. And I hope I'm not being too critical. I've been a little bit worried about Jabeur and a little bit worried about Garcia that I'm now going to highlight. I still don't know if that tennis is sustainable throughout the entire tournament and also sustainable for her. I've just seen in years gone by some chinks in her armor, but I didn't see this level from her either, or this level of consistency. So she's already proven me wrong to some extent, and she could well prove me wrong in a bigger way. Let me know in the live chat. Garcia or Jabeur, can either of them go on and win this tournament? Or do you think they're going to go on and win this tournament? Okay, let's have a look at some of the action to come up later today. Kvitova against Pegula there in the 4th round. Mrs. Consistent Pegula, I guess most of us are probably thinking that she will prevail in that match, but it is close, maybe even 55-45. Tiafoe Nadal, arguably the biggest match on the men's side, at least today. I think Tiafoe could trouble Nadal. I think this could go 5. And if it goes 5, I think it'll then be about whether Nadal is match ready for 5 sets. He went 5, of course, at Wimbledon against Fritz, albeit I think he was slightly aided by some anxiety from Fritz that day, who really didn't perform in that 5th set as he should have done because Nadal was there for the taking. I know Nadal's forehand in that 5th set was insane, but Nadal was there for the taking that day, particularly as he picked up that abdominal tear that ultimately meant he had to pull out the tournament. I don't know if Nadal is match ready for 5 sets. Probably he is, but I don't know, given his injury-prone year, if you like. It's bizarre to say so, given that, he's won 2 of the 3 majors, and he's actually unbeaten. I think it's 22-0 this year in majors. So we'll see. But I do see that going far, the distance perhaps. And I certainly see Tiafoe taking a set. And I think it's an interesting matchup. I think they've played twice before with Nadal winning both, but it's not that we have a huge body of evidence for this match. It's not like we've seen him play 10 times or Gasquet 18 times to have a good idea how it's going to go. When I said match of the day, I wanted to say on the men's side, because Daniil Collins Sabalenka, yes, please. Get the popcorn out, because I think that could be an absolute cracker. Let me know if that's the match you're most looking forward to today. I think arguably on both the men's and the women's side, that possibly is the match of the day coming up. Also on Arthur Ashe, and deservedly so. I think that may well be the first match this evening. Yes, it is. It's the 7 o'clock match, I believe, in New York, and therefore around about 1 a.m. here. That is a real good matchup. I probably would go Collins. Largely based on what happened in Australia and also what's happened here so far, and also based on I really like Sabalenka, but there's always a wobble, and she can sometimes get away with it against lesser opponents. But Daniil Collins is not a lesser opponent. Super talented. Again, I love the way she plays. I love the way both players play, and that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to this. I think this will also go 3. And I see Collins just prevailing. Let me know what you think in the live chat. Cilic against Alcaraz. Cilic is always a bundle of fun, particularly in his celebrations. I do see it being the end of the road here for him today, though, because Alcaraz... I tweeted, by the way, yesterday, which is not a tweet that's aged very well. I said that Alcaraz and Daniil Medvedev have been the most impressive players at the tournament so far. That was after 3 rounds. I also did put an asterisk, and that doesn't mean I think both are going to get to the final, but in the first 3 rounds, they are the 2 most impressive players. But I also put along with that asterisk saying it's all about peaking at the right time. And, I think that's what it's all about. And that's where we see Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer doing so well, is that they start to peak at the right time. And Medvedev perhaps peaked too early in that match against Wu, but Kyrgios peaking at the right time. Unusual, because we wouldn't ever think that about him, perhaps, but certainly he suggested that yesterday because he had to produce his best tennis, of course, to prevail against the current world number one, outgoing world number one. Other matches on today, Cam Norrie, Rublev. I think, has Cam Norrie really been tested yet? I would say no. This one's 50-50. It's 50-50 for me. I had Norrie getting to the quarterfinals at the beginning of the tournament, but maybe that Rublev victory against Shapovalov has changed my mind. Rublev, of course, was serving that particular match out, couldn't close it out, but did manage to win the tiebreak, which is a real good show of mental strength. And I think beating Shapovalov, and also Shapovalov played really well. This wasn't the Shapovalov of earlier in the year when he lost, 76 matches in a row. This was Shapovalov returning to the kind of level that we know Shapovalov can, produce. And Rublev winning in 5, I think, is a good feather in his cap. And I'm actually going to change my mind. Before the tournament, I would have said Norrie winning this match. And I know Norrie's been impressive so far in the way he's progressed to this stage. I think he's not dropped a set. But anyway, that's how it is. That's how I see it going. I do see Rublev prevailing, maybe in 4 or 5 as well. I know he went 5 the other day, and you might think lethargy and tiredness might get involved, but I think at this stage of the tournament, it's okay to have 1 or 2 5-set matches. I think they can catch up with you, as we saw with perhaps Tommy Paul when he had his third 5-setter in a row in the third round. I think that possibly was too much for him. But 1 5-setter that Rublev had against Shapovalov, no problem. And I think Rublev is going through. Let me know in the live chat what you think about some of my suggestions and predictions. I will be coming to it shortly. You may well have very different predictions to me, and I can understand why, because there's so many tight matches today. Swiatek Neymar, I do see this being the end of the road for Neymar. It's been a great run for her. But come on, this is Iga Swiatek, the world number one, who, don't forget, did have a really good hard court season as well back in the spring. That was also a part of her 35-match unbeaten run. I think it was back-to-back Masters 1000 Sunshine Double with Miami and Indian Wells. So, boom, should be winning this, but who knows? Maybe the romantic story of Neymar progressing can continue. Azarenka Pliskova, honestly, no idea. So I'm not even going to make a prediction for that one. Ivashka Sinner. I'm shocked that Ivashka's got this far. I forget who did Ivashka beat in the previous round. It was a kind of a surprise to see Ivashka win the previous round. Forget who that was against, but it was a surprise. I remember that, thinking that it was against Herbie Hurkacz, wasn't it? Herbie Hurkacz, you know who I mean, Hurkacz. I think that was him, wasn't it, in the previous round? But I think this will be the end of the road for him. Sinner is looking pretty good, and I do expect a Sinner Alcaraz quarterfinal, which will be very interesting. Okay, I said I'd go to the live chat before we finish, and I'm going to do that now. Yeah, by the way, let's come back to Coco Gauff. She does have incredible defense or defense. Something I didn't highlight before, and I think I should do, because she's not got just got the backhand winner. Her defense is insane. She gets the ball back, but also gets the ball back deep, if you like. Gets the ball back incredibly, and gets it back deep. Nick, by the way, here going for Garcia is his title favorite right now. Could be equal with Iga, depending on how her match goes today. Yeah, I guess she's 1 round further than Iga, so that helps. But for me, I don't know. I would still make Iga the favorite. I mean, I predicted her to win at the beginning of the tournament, and I've seen nothing so far. I mean, Iga's run as well has not been super easy, particularly Sloane Stephens in the second round. And I don't think Iga's dropped a set yet either. Here from Meadow, by the way. Get your final comments in the live chat. Let me know whether you think my predictions are crazy, silly, completely wrong. They probably will be. So you can highlight that in the live chat and let me know what your predictions are for some of today's matches. Meadow here saying, I hope Cilic can produce that level that he had from the win over Eddie at the French Open, and he can beat anyone with that level. Anyone, Meadow? You think Cilic can beat anyone? Do you think he can beat Berrettini with that level, or Kyrgios, or Nadal with that level? I'm not sure. I like Cilic, and of course, I think he's a US Open winner in the past. I think the draw kind of opened up. He did beat, I think, did he beat Federer during that US Open in 2015? I'm probably getting every single slight stat wrong here, but yeah, he's a former winner. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the live chat. Let me know in the live chat whether you think Swiatek or Garcia is more likely to win the US Open this year. Put S just for whom. Not it's not your prediction of who you think is going to win the tournament, but who do you think is more likely? Swiatek S, Garcia G. Get it in the live chat now. S or G, S or G. S for Swiatek. You see her going further, let's say. Let's frame it that way. Who's going further in this tournament? Garcia is already in the quarterfinals, don't forget. Swiatek in fourth round action today. S for Swiatek going further. G for Garcia going further. Meadow there talking about Medvedev. It was straight sets dismantling of Medvedev. Yes, he was. I remember. He said it was the best match of his career. I think the context there, though, is the fact it was on clay as well. Just such a surprise that he would do so well. I also remember the beginning of that match. Medvedev actually started, I think, pretty well. I'm kind of surprised how the match panned out. I thought Medvedev, just the first couple of games, I just remember thinking, oh, Medvedev's playing well. I think he'll win today. Didn't turn out that way. Remember, in the live chat, S for Swiatek, G for Garcia. Who's going further? Get your thoughts in right now. Don't be afraid. We're all wrong. I'm wrong. I had Tsitsipas to win the US Open this year. Got it wrong. I had Zverev to win in Australia. Got it wrong. I had Djokovic to win the French. Got it wrong. And I had Djokovic to win Wimbledon. Got it right. But it just goes to show I get it wrong more often than not. So don't be afraid to say S or G in the live chat. Meadow there going S. Thank you for that, Meadow. Nick, I want to hear what you think. I know what you think already. Put G in that live chat so I can at least bring it up on the screen to give everyone some confirmation that you think Garcia is going further. I think Alcaraz now looks most likely to win the men's title. That's an interesting call, Nick. Yeah, maybe. It's the small matter of a potential Jannik Sinner match in the quarterfinal and a Nadal semifinal. Should Nadal progress, that may end up being just one tough player too many. But who knows? He's just an incredible player. You're agreeing with my match picks so far. Thanks, Nick. Anyway, thanks, Meadow. Yeah, it's getting exciting and have fun in New York. I will, Meadow, but thanks for your support. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. You'll still have a couple more minutes to write S or G in the live chat. Who's he going further, Swiatek or Garcia? But you can also tweet me at TalkingTennisTT, just simply with the word letter, G or S, or also put it in the live comments, or put it in the comments, below. 57 minutes. It's been the longest 20 minutes so far. Maybe for some of you, the longest 20 minutes of your lives. I'm going to get the final words out now. Tennis World, thanks for stopping by.